This podcast may contain disturbing content for some listeners. It's intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. This is True Crime XS.
Okay, I thought we'd start. So we're moving back to serial killers. We obviously had a lot of holiday episodes that came out that weren't serial killer related. And I thought we'd start moving back to that. But I didn't want to just like dive completely into that because there was some true crime news I sort of wanted to include in what we were doing. One thing I will say is this week is the 25th, I think it's the 25th anniversary of Mikkel Biggs.
Is it?
Yeah, she's 99. So, they have a sort of person of interest in that case that's doing 200 years in prison or whatever. But I always think about her. For people that don't know, Mikkel Biggs was last seen riding her bicycle in Mesa, Arizona, January the 2nd of 1999. She was with her sister, and they thought they heard an ice cream truck in the distance. So they asked her mom for some money, and then she just vanished. So I always think of her this time of year.
Something about her case that I always remember is it was so quick. She was there and then she wasn't there, and her bike was out on the road and the wheel on her bike was still moving.
Yeah. From
where it had come to rest, and that's haunting to me.
Yeah, it is haunting. There was another case nearby where this older woman had basically been attacked and assaulted, and someone was arrested for that. So, that's always been the person of interest for the police. But I think of her this time of year. If you want to, I know she's on all the sites out there, and I think there's even maybe a documentary or a good YouTube on her. But Mikkel Diane Biggs, if she were alive today, she'd be 36 years old. I always think of her, and I wanted to mention her here because we had done so many missing persons in a row, and there are multiple pictures of her that kind of stand out in my head. Big smiling face, and I had a couple pieces of true crime news. Did you hear about this teenager that was found in the trap door?
Yes.
This is a weird one for me. And when I hear about these cases, I think about the ways that it could go down. But ultimately, a 16-year-old North Carolina girl was found under the trap door in the bedroom, under a trap door in the bedroom of I think he's 35 years old. Positive that guy got arrested. But this girl had been missing from Fayetteville, North Carolina for a month. And she met him online, and he originally told her he was 19. And then when they meet in person, she questioned why he looked so much older because, she's 16 and he's clearly not 19. And he told her that he was 25. And eventually she gets to his house and meets his family, and turns out that he's 34. And then he wouldn't let her leave. That's going to be a kidnapping situation there. As far as the charges, I think he got statutory rape, unlawful imprisonment, assault, strangulation.
And he lived with his mom, at least, right?
It was his mom or his mom and grandma. It was the story. You can find it out there. The guy's name is Zack Jones. And they don't talk about the girl because she is clearly underage.
It made me wonder, because the mom cooperated with law enforcement, right?
Yeah.
But it made me wonder, how does that even happen with her there, right? I mean, I know the guy's a grown man, but at the same time, it seems like that would come up, right? The girl under the trapdoor.
Yeah, so the mom said she thought the girl was 18 or 19, one or the other. The girl had run away from her grandparents' house. And the story that they initially give after she's found is that grandmother had kicked her out. And there was a lot of commentary from the mom in a news article where she said she had all these piercings and tattoos, I think is how she said it. And the story that was told, it gets sensationalized and publicized because of the trapdoor situation. The trapdoor, whatever it is, the way he tells investigators when he's talking to them is that she decided to get in there to hide from the police. So there's something going on there. I don't think it's going to be he's any kind of serial predator. He's just a predator.
I don't think I saw that part. What did he say? He said she got in there to hide from the police?
Yeah, there's a couple of different things, but he said she hid in there on her own free will. She was in the bed when the police officers first came in, but then she hid. So they have a couple of different things where the grandparents are talking about her, and she just left the house, cut off her phone, and went with this guy. But I'm highlighting this one, and I'm not giving tons of details on it. One, because I don't know what happened to this girl, and I think none of it's good. When I hear people online say, "Oh, they had sex 3 or 4 times," and this, no, he assaulted her. He knew she was a 16-year-old girl, which is why he said he was 19. Even if she said she was 19, he should have known. And he's 34 years old.
Yeah, that's really bad.
I was shocked that things like this are still happening. But I guess I'm just kind of ignorant in 2024.
Well, I mean, clearly I could see a lot of ways that this could have been prevented, right? But you're right. I don't know that you're ignorant. I just think maybe you have high expectations. I don't really know. This is clearly not a situation where a 16-year-old should be, but if she's lying about her age, yeah, I don't know.
It's complicated, yeah.
I don't know really where the line is, but I'm glad that it has worked out this way.
Yeah, I'm glad that she's been recovered. That's the thing that I was thinking. I was like, okay, she's found. That's important. And I don't know what her situation was. I don't know what else they had going on there. But I'm glad that authorities have set all of this up where they're going to dig into it. And I hope that whatever's supposed to happen there happens. I just can't believe that a 34-year-old man would, even if she's 19, let's just go ahead and say that, at least check. Because otherwise you just are a creepy perv. And that's, you're just kind of stuck.
Man,
it's
so
hard
much wrapped up in that.
It is so hard to talk about those cases now because it's real easy. Everybody jumps on him online, which maybe we should.
He is absolutely in the wrong.
Yeah, he's in the wrong. But I'm saying from the perspective of let's let this play out in court is kind of where I land on that.
Oh, certainly. And, all the minimization and everything, I don't care if she was in the bed. I don't care if she did get in the trapdoor and was hiding. It doesn't matter. She's 16. She doesn't get to make choices like that, right? I mean, obviously she made the choices, but it's detrimental, right? And of course, as middle-aged adults, we know that, right? I would go so far as to say having run away from her grandparents, I'm not sure when you run away for your adventure and to get out of whatever situation you don't want to be in, if the situation you end up in is worse, I feel like it may be a little counterproductive.
Well, there were a number of things there that were odd, and my understanding is what happened is the local sheriffs get a domestic violence call on Christmas Day, and they come check it out, and then this unfolds. And the sheriff even says, and one of the deputies in an interview that I was reading said, basically he found out she wasn't the age she presented to him, and he wasn't the age he presented to her. So they're both lying to each other.
But he's an adult.
Right, but he's an adult. And what happens at that moment in time when you're 34 years old pretending to be 19 or 20 or whatever he was pretending, and you find out that you're with a 16-year-old, that's the moment that you go, oh, I need to rectify this situation right now, not take her home and have sex with her, because he drove and picked her up. So he's going to have a different problem there.
Do you think that he really believes she was 19?
It doesn't matter. he finds out her age and he threatens her instead of like, so he definitely discovered her age. They had been pulled over, I think, for speeding, and they had to present their IDs. That's my, and I'm totally speculating now. That's my guess on when they discovered each other's ages were way off. I'm sure there was some kind of BS that might have been mutual. Doesn't matter. The adult has the responsibility to say, I need to end this terrible situation before it gets worse.
If they were pulled over and presented their IDs or whatever, he should just handed her over right then.
Yeah. But he apparently got mouthy and started threatening. I don't know how far he took those threats, whether it really was just mouthy or if it was like legitimate communicating threats. Either way, that's like, he said he was going to hurt the deputy that had pulled them over. He said he was going to hurt her. And that's where you move into terrible territory. It wasn't good to begin with. And now you're in felonious territory. So you need to stop it before you get her home and do something worse. But he apparently is not the brightest bulb there. And so I am sure that he is going to get, hopefully, what's coming to him. I just thought that was a weird thing to happen over the holidays. The other one was, did you see this this judge in Nevada?
I think the entire universe saw that.
He said he had a bad day.
Yeah, that guy is exactly where he needs to be. Let me ask you, just real quick. I know you sent me the clip. Did you watch like the 13-minute clip?
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw the whole. Like, you're talking about the hearing up to this. The ending, right? Where
the prosecutor's talking, and then he has the defendant has the opportunity to speak, and he speaks, and boy, does he ever speak, and like he just basically says the same thing over and over again, and then his attorney kind of steps in, and what they were getting at was I couldn't really hear the prosecutor on the video I watched, but basically he was saying like what the state wanted as far as punishment goes, because he had pled guilty, right?
Right.
And then this, so he had failed to show up in court in December, and I'm not really sure what brought him there that morning, but he had been a bench warrant had been issued for his arrest because he failed to appear for sentencing. But when he's standing there, he's wearing a T-shirt and casual pants. He's not in any sort of like prison garb, right? So he had turned himself in, I guess.
So here's what for people who haven't seen this, you can go. I'm sure it's on YouTube at this point, and multiple news outlets played it. This is a 30-year-old guy named Deobra Redden, which is spelled like Deborah with an O, Deobra, Redden, Redden. He was in a Las Vegas courtroom, and he was being sentenced on a charge of attempted battery with substantial bodily harm. His attorney at the time is talking back and forth with the prosecutor to the judge, and they're basically trying to decide what to do with a guilty plea on this attempted battery charge. The attorney lays out a pretty good spiel that's pretty typical of what you hear. And if you see the longer clip, the defendant does talk way too much. But the idea was the attorney has set it up to, so you never know if this is BS or not when they start talking, to explain to the judge that this guy has a brand new job. He has, quote, plans to resume his education, which is what every defense attorney says to, a judge during sentencing, unless their client's just off the rails. They were talking, like literally talking about him having mental health issues, and he said he was trying to learn from his mistakes. But then the judge is a woman named Mary Kay Holthus. She starts reading his criminal history just out loud, just like checking it off. And his criminal history is lots of felonies, lots of misdemeanors, multiple domestic violence charges, robberies, attempted home invasion. And she basically says that because he has so many felonies, that she doesn't feel like probation is appropriate for what they're going to sentence him to.
I feel like that quote's important.
Yeah, and you're right. He is. Because I only saw him at first. The very first time I saw it, I only saw him from behind. So it's just him like Supermaning.
Well, the only reason I noticed was because he's clearly not in a jail jumpsuit, right? And
Oh
so
yeah, you're right. He's in street clothes.
right, and he walks up of his own accord when his case is called, right?
Right. This judge has already issued a bench warrant on somebody, which means like he is, whether he knows it or not, he was on the shit list long before this event takes place. Because if you don't show up, a judge knows you don't respect the process. So the attorney in this video, well,
I don't feel like that. I think that he like put himself on the shit list.
that's what I said.
I know, but I don't think the judges like. I don't think her sentencing him is like a shit list sentence.
No.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't really start out that way. But so the attorney jumps in, not the defendant, Redden. The attorney jumps in and basically says he believes that his client will complete the probation and blah, blah, blah. And this is one of the problems people have with the criminal justice system is people get chance after chance after chance. And the judge she's not being super judgmental here. She's just saying she appreciates what the attorney has said. And she literally says, I think it's time that he gets a taste of something else because she just can't imagine with this history. And she doesn't get to say anything else because Deobra Redden cuts her off. He says, fuck that bitch. And then he runs towards the judge and Superman's arms out over the bench and takes the judge against the wall. He knocks out the flagpole holding the flag behind the bench. And he takes her all the way to the ground and they disappear underneath the judge's bench, like from view. And then multiple people get involved, including a clerk and a marshal. Now, the clerk is sitting to the right of the judge when the video starts, and he's just trying to get between them, but he doesn't know what to do.
Right, but I don't know if you. I was very fascinated by this. I have to say, I'm not condoning this behavior. However, for what it is and the fact that it's already happened, if you're only going to watch one in-court camera review this entire year, this is the one to watch. Okay?
I've never seen anything like it.
I haven't either. But I believe his name is the law clerk that was sitting, that's to the right hand side from the audience. His name is Michael Lasso.
Okay.
And when the defendant says his remarks as the judge is looking down reading by the power of the state of Nevada, and she's going to sentence him. And the law clerk actually, I think, and maybe I'm over speaking here, but I really feel like if he had hit her with full force without the law clerk's hands on him, I think that he could have killed her, like with her hitting her head on the wall.
I think, yeah, she hits the wall really hard. And like Meg is describing, the law clerk kind of cushions what's happening.
He grabs a hold of him. So like the full force didn't go on her, right?
Correct. Like he deflects basically. And there is a marshal close by that gets involved pretty quickly. And, it
takes a second for everybody to figure out what's happening.
Yeah, it all happened so fast, but it is worth watching this video. And I agree with you. If you're going to only watch one court video this year, this is the one to watch. I've seen attacks in courtrooms. I've physically been standing there when defendants do stupid shit. I've never seen anything like this. And the fact that they are able to break this up this quickly is sort of a miracle because he is like in a position to be on top of her and to hurt her. And one particular marshal, and like right off the top of my head, I don't know his name, but he ends up with a head injury and some pretty serious, I think he got 30 stitches or something.
His name is Shane Brandon.
Is it Shane Brandon? Okay. Mm-hmm. I've never seen anything like this where someone jumps over a bench. This is one of the most tremendously stupid acts I have seen a defendant pull out of their pocket. And this guy let us know in less than 3 seconds why he really doesn't deserve to be out of jail at all.
And he had like what he was saying before all this happened, like not even a minute before. I don't know how long his attorney spoke, but he rambles on about his ability to do probation, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I'm not really sure that was the way to go with that, but whatever, that's what he said. He had been on probation twice and successfully completed it. Now, that usually means, I would say successful completion doesn't warrant a second time for another crime, much less a third, right?
Yeah, the reason that you get the probation, not to cut you off, is so that you stop doing the stupid shit you're doing that got you there.
So just because you got through it and you were no longer on it, I still don't think it was successful. Now, she does say that, she's going to give... I did think the remark was a little bit snide, but she's the judge, right?
I've seen a lot more snide judges.
I have seen, like, to warrant that type of reaction. Now, let me ask you this. If that judge if the court was being represented by a male judge... do you think this guy would have done that?
No, this guy. Honestly, this guy strikes me as an overgrown
bully.
A bully. Yeah, that's the right word. I look at him and like he might be like tough in certain situations, but the truth is he did this because he is scared to death of going to prison. And I think prison's the perfect place for him. Now the problem is this. He's going to be worse when he gets out of prison.
Unfortunately, yeah. I would say that he's going to get, I was just speculating, but I bet he gets 25 years for this.
Yeah, so the results of what happened here.
You know that in the follow-up, he says he was trying to kill her.
Yeah.
So it's attempted murder of a judicial official.
Well, as of right now, he has 7 felony counts of attack on a protected person.
For that incident.
For the jumping over the bench incident. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's where it currently sits. But it hasn't, this has just happened. It hasn't happened. We have not had enough time for him to be indicted yet, but he will be. And that comment is gonna, I think it'll be more than 25 years because I think whoever gets this in terms of a prosecutor and a judge, Deobra or Deborah or whatever his name is, Redden, is about to find out how to make yourself be an example for something without even trying.
Right, and he's going to wish he had been having a bad day that day.
Yeah, because he's about to have a couple of real bad days that result in a couple of real bad years. I don't think he'll see the light of day I don't think he'll get out again for at least 15 years.
Right. Now, because this is so, I mean, my impression of this is it just went crazy viral, right? Because it is so incredible. Had a discussion with somebody about it, and they felt like his reaction was a reflection of him being mentally ill. And I was surprised by that. And it's entirely possible. But what I saw when I was watching the entire clip, it's mentioned that one of his foster mom, she was sitting there in court. She had agreed to allow her to stay with him when he was sentenced to probation, right?
Yeah.
And I felt, and this man is 30 years old.
Yep.
And it kind of tells you something when your foster mom is there, right? And that I presume she's the only person that was there for him in court. And it's sad, right? However, when the person I was speaking with about this said, like, oh, yeah, you can tell he's mentally ill, because he does go into that briefly when he's giving his pleading speech to the judge. To me, I don't see mental illness in what he did, because there's not a person on earth who's going to be really happy to be to hope for probation and be not given it and sentenced to go in, right?
Yeah.
It's like a little kid having a explosive tantrum. That's what I see. Because think about it. Can't you see like a 2-year-old doing what he did?
Yeah, but that could also be a sign of mental illness. I won't discount the idea that he could potentially be mentally ill. I'm honestly not in a position. All I've observed here, I've pulled up his criminal record. I've read some past trial transcripts on him. I've read like some different things that he's done. But like, and me in that video and like what I've been able to do in, I don't know, 48 hours or whatever, I can't discount that. In fact, what I can say is this. That's even more reason to lock him up. If this is what happens when he's unmedicated and out in society, standing in a courtroom where I can't think off the top of my head, other than maybe a funeral or a church, I cannot think of another place where you are expected to have a particular projected sense of decorum other than a courtroom. Where are you supposed to do that? And if you can't hold it together, because he's clearly, and I tend to side with you here, and here's why. He was very clearly rambling on about his achievements, not a minute and a half before this happens.
Right. And if she had said, okay, sir, you know, that sounds great. I'm going to give you probation. This would not have occurred.
Yeah. So I think he has probably, I'm sure he has had trauma and he has suffered through some stuff because that's the way the world goes. But he's probably been a little coddled along the way.
Well, don't you?
Pretty large individual.
He is a big guy, which is what I think makes it so just, I mean, it just is mind-blowing to watch this huge guy. He doesn't even hit the floor between where he's standing and the bench. And like, so he's nimble, right? He's nimble and he's fast. And then he's imploring damage too, which you can see like immediately. And I thought it's just so much all at once to take in. But that decision where everybody that's on the other side of that and they're like, oh crap, I'm going to go to jail. Every person would absolutely love to do what he did, right? And it's not even personal against the judge. It's just like, oh my goodness, I didn't get my way, right? And I don't know that not doing that, like going, oh, wait, I can't do that because I've got to show the decorum that's expected in a courtroom, right? I think that's maturity.
Look, like I said, decorum, maturity, ever how you want to look at this. When you're in court, you're told how to act. And like if for people who haven't been in court recently, it's been so bad that generally speaking, in most courtrooms that have local rules, a deputy will step forward, particularly on crowded days, and he will tell you what's about to happen. He will explain to you to cut your phone off or whatever other thing that are rules for the judge's courtroom, because they set the rules for, you know, what's going to happen in front of them. And those rules are conveyed to you. This guy is not ignorant of that. He's clearly had a lot of time in court. This guy is like, you know, if he's an athlete, right? He's had his time trials. He's had his practices. He's had his rehearsals. He knows how to behave here to get the result that he wants. And the truth is, she was probably about to say something based on what I was seeing. Like,
he was going to get like a day in jail.
Yeah. She was like, I'm going to give him 90 days. That's what she was going to say. She was going to say something to the effect of, I'm going to give him 90 days. And she might have even added on something like, I'm going to suspend 60 of it, and then he's going to have to do that probation as well. She didn't look like she was about to, you know, give him 50 years in prison. Maybe she was. She definitely is going to now.
You're not well, she won't. Somebody else will. But you don't go in. And from what I could just barely make out from the prosecutor, it didn't even seem like they were arguing against probation, right?
No, they weren't really making, they didn't know what to do with this guy.
And so my point is that you're not arguing like to have a suspended sentence that you serve not in jail on probation out in the community when the possibility is that you're going to go for like 15 years or something, right? That doesn't weigh itself out, right? It had to have been something. I don't know how long the sentence might have been, but we're not talking about his entire life, right? For sure.
We were not originally before he decided to.
Now he is. he will not get out. He won't get away with this on probation. That's for sure. And I really feel like he's probably going to get about 25 years for this. That's just my thought, and I hate it for him because
I don't. I'm glad that he's going to get this time. Maybe he'll change his shit.
Well, I hate it for him because I feel like the kind of skills he's lacking there, he may not. It was somebody else's job to instill that in him when he was a child, and that didn't happen. Right?
That's fine. It's still not an excuse to behave this way. Okay, look, if you're in here for
absolutely not.
If you're in here for strong arming someone, and I think he had a battery, and he had a coercion charge, and he had
he's a bully. There's no question.
Yeah, he just needs to meet a bigger bully than him one good time, whether that's intellectually, psychologically, or physically. And like he needs to be put in his place in a way that like he doesn't behave this way. And I don't know what you do with him until then. And I understand people's, there's mental illness in there. Well, that's fine.
I don't feel like it is mental illness.
Well, I don't care. It like that doesn't excuse the behavior because he's clearly been in court enough that if he had listened to what's been done here, I mean, he has a foster mom at 30. I'm going to be real polite about that. That means somebody in your life cares. And that person has probably given you some advice. If she's standing there and they brought her to the courtroom to say that he can live there, I'm guessing along the way you might have gotten some advice like, don't put your hands on other people. Okay? If he would have listened to that advice along the way, one, he wouldn't be here because a lot of these are assaults. He has a lot of assaults. But two, he wouldn't have come across the bench at a judge. I have no sympathy for somebody who comes across the bench at a judge. They're going to get it whether I have it or not.
That is one of the shortest lists, I think. Maybe not for lack of trying, but typically they don't make it to the judge, right? And so that particular, not only, did he make it across the bench, he engaged and it went on. And I do think it's not a matter of them being incompetent. I think they were just stunned. I think everybody was stunned. He makes it across the bench and the brawl is on for a good couple of minutes.
Yeah, everybody jumps in. The clerk tries to do something. This guy he tussles with the marshal to the point that I think the marshal maybe dislocated his elbow or his shoulder. It wasn't pretty, and some of it happens off screen, so it has that level of suspense that it feels like something out of a Hollywood movie.
Well, and honestly, at first, I didn't realize the judge wasn't who he was beating on,
wailing on, yeah.
And so that was her marshal or a bailiff, or it was somebody in law enforcement. But I thought that was her, and I see all these guys standing there, right? And I'm going, why aren't they doing anything? Then, of course, his attorney walks up to the bench. His attorney does not get physically involved. And if I had to put a caption on that part of the video, it would be I don't get paid enough as a public defender to do anything here, right?
Yeah.
And he's washed his hands of the whole situation. I don't blame him. There's not a whole lot that's going to happen to the defendant here that's worth getting your hands dirty for.
Well, I would take that a step further and say there is literally nothing that guy can do. One, he can't physically confront this oaf and what he just did, and two, he can't help him legally now.
No, no.
There's nobody that can help that guy after something like that happens. I will say this: one, I hope that everybody recovers okay, and two, I hope that guy gets the whatever he needs, wake up call, assistance, help, whatever, that doesn't make the next half of his life miserable. My gut says he won't make it because the other few people I've seen do things that were even, and this is if this is a 10, then what I've seen previously, particularly in person, it's a 3 or a 4.
I agree with that. I have never seen anything like this towards a judge. We talked last year about Taylor Shabiznas on her own attorney, right?
Yeah.
This is just one of those things that, like, there's never, ever going to be an excuse for why you did this, right?
No.
I did see at the very end, the video cuts around and the judge does stand up and she has made comments and she's, okay. Like
Yeah.
she's not, I don't know what kind of scrapes and bumps she's got, but he did not succeed in killing her. But I honestly, for a split second, thought that, oh, wow, this is going to be like the first thing I see. And this guy's going to beat this judge to death. Right?
Yeah. It was disturbing. So if you watch it, keep that in mind. But I do think people should see stuff like this so that you realize there are people like this in the world. That guy changed his whole life in what by my count is less than 2 seconds.
Right, but I feel like you're on a path when you're able to do that to begin with, right?
Yeah.
It didn't come out of nowhere. Wow, just wow. It's
So,
crazy.
I have one more piece of true crime news. And so I'm going to preface this by saying when we come back in the next episode, we're going to be chasing a serial killer. A couple, actually, the way that the story goes. Do you have anything else on this judge and defendant thing?
No.
I'm going to save that. I'm going to come back with an outro in a second. But okay, so I have one other wild thing that happened over the holidays, and I've been following this guy for a second. He is on my highway initiative list. He pops up on there because he gets arrested in 2022, and he does some nonsense over the holidays that was shocking to me. Had you ever heard? Well, let me rephrase that. Do you remember us like briefly talking about this investigative genealogy case that happened where this guy got arrested?
I'm not really sure. It seems very familiar, but it was kind of news to me, honestly.
There were 2 cases that you and I covered, and we were talking about the Highway Killer Initiative. For people who don't know what that is, there have been a couple of these along the way. But recently we had talked a little bit about Sean Goebel. He's a much older one. We had talked about Bruce Mendenhall. And there was this guy, Collie McCraney, that we talked about. He got arrested for killing 2 teenage girls down in, I think he got arrested in Alabama, maybe. But he's been in the last couple of years. We've talked about all of these guys, just kind of along the way. And then when we talk about them, Keith Jesperson's in that pile. There's not much that we can do where we can track it because a lot of these cases sort of fall off the radar. Clark Baldwin is one of them. I haven't heard anything about him in a couple of years, and I've wondered. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I feel like just the way you're summing this up, I feel like you're illustrating it perfectly because the Highway Killer Initiative, however that's referred to, it's law enforcement working together across the country to basically try and bring some closure to the vast amount of mostly women, but it doesn't have to be a woman, bodies found on the sides of the roads off the highways, right?
Yeah.
That have come to a traumatic end. Because if you look at all those numbers, it's really devastating. There's been a lot of people kind of thrown off the highway after they've been killed. And
right.
As technology comes around and, we're in 2024, and this has been going on for a while, the initiative, right?
Right.
The thought behind it is let's get these cases solved. But I feel like it kind of morphed to where there's an impression that it's one killer. And it certainly isn't, right?
I think it's driven a lot of investigators crazy over the years that way too. Because I remember, and I'm not going to name them right here, right now, but there've been people that have presented. I'll go to different conferences and different things, and they've been presenting different theories. Like this one guy, and you may remember him now, but I don't remember his name right this second. I have the materials still here on my bookshelf somewhere. But there's this one guy that's it's all the blonde women. And he said that there was a killer and they were hunting these blonde women. And he had this whole list because I remember it because it had Holly Bubba's picture on this thing that he did. And I was just this is crazy. But so many people have tried to give input on this highway thing over the years.
It's a lot. And it's so much that I have pretty consistently kind of thrown my hands up in the air because I can't follow usually I cannot follow what's being put down, which, it may be me, but it also may be that it doesn't follow logic. One of the most, I would say, reactive things that somebody who's had an encounter that resulted in the other person's death, one of the most reactive things that would happen is for the body to be dumped. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
To me, you can take into account a whole lot of stuff here, but some of the thought processes, you've got truckers that truck all the way across the country and these are the long haul truckers with the big cabs, and, they basically have like a bed and stuff in their cab, and some of them entertain, and there's a whole sort of known society thing out there where, girls ride with guys and whatever. And I have always thought that in those types of situations, no matter what's happening, there's a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong. I would say some of these cases are probably related, but I don't know about you. I always had the impression that they, it was conjuring up like this sort of like truck driving boogeyman or whatever you would think of, where it's this one guy whose prerogative is to do nothing but kill women and throw their bodies off on the highway.
I think that's the headline skimming version of it. I think that's what ends up happening, but there's so many of them that have been arrested. There's literally dozens of these serial killers that were truck drivers.
Right. And so that's what I was sort of getting at is when I've looked at this set of cases, particularly like the Highway Killer Initiative, the ones that would fall in that group, I try to focus on the victims because you get really lost if you don't focus on them individually, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of bodies that have been discarded on the highways in the United States.
Yeah, and I would say that's even a good place to illustrate where to start this story. And this has a very recent tie. This is not tied to the overarching series that we're doing necessarily. And I have a lot of sources on this. Most of them are 13 on Your Side, MLive News, Fox 59. There's a lot of stuff on Reddit and newspapers. I'll try to remember to say each source. I'm pulling this together from a couple of years worth of stuff that's gone on. The first thing is this. On October 3rd of 1996, Kent County Sheriff deputies, they responded to an incident on 76th Street Southeast between Patterson Avenue and Kraft Avenue in Caledonia Township. That's up in Michigan. Someone had called in that a woman had been found deceased there, and they find this woman. They determine pretty quickly that she's been sexually assaulted and she's been strangled to death. And that woman later gets identified as a 29-year-old who had been missing named Sharon Hammock. That's 1996. This woman is essentially ripped out of her life and leaves a lot of family behind. She's found lying in tall grass in a field. She's wrapped up in a thin cloth. And authorities back then, they said that her panties had been pulled down around her ankles and that her body was found just 10 feet off the road. Autopsy tells them that she's also 4 weeks pregnant. Nothing happens with that case for 26 years. And then, 26 years later, in August of 2022, there's an arrest made. This guy has an extensive criminal record going back to that time, including Kent County charges. He had a lot of criminal sexual assault crimes. Depending on where you're at, that's either CSA or CSC crimes. He spent 11 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections for first-degree rape. So he went into prison in August of 1981, and he got out in June of 1992, which would have been about 4 years before Sharon Hammock had been found. So whoever had killed Sharon Hammock, they left DNA in her in several places. They had also left DNA on a robe. And that rope had been used to hogtie her before strangling her. And then for some reason, they stabbed her in the head with a knife. It took a long time for them to figure all of this out. But back in 2006, there was a sex worker who was raped and stabbed to death in Maryland. And the killer there had left DNA on the victim. So familial DNA gets done on Sharon Hammock's case and this case in Maryland. And they figured out that it was the same person. The DNA exam, like if you read like what they did, the initial exam in when they put all of this together, it says that the person who committed both of these crimes had the same parents. Kent County Sheriff's detectives, they track that DNA forward. They find a couple, and that couple has 4 sons. They start digging into those 4 male relatives, and they discover that only one of them has any ties to Michigan. This guy had been living and working pretty close to the murder scene. He had been in the state of Michigan, and they know he had ties to the state of Michigan because he had originally spent a lot of time in prison there. This other case, they're kind of stuck on, the Maryland case, because that victim actually came out of California and ends up in Maryland. But they're able to put this guy from Michigan within 20 miles of the location this other woman came out of. So authorities figured out that Sharon had a history of doing some sex work. And at the time of her death, there were nearly a dozen unsolved murders of women going back who were confirmed to be involved in sex work. And authorities began to wonder if they might all be linked to one suspect. And they didn't initially have this guy on their radar. Definitely not as they knew he was a predator, law enforcement did, but they did not know that he was a serial killer. At the time I started reading about this, they weren't saying this guy has killed all of these people, but they did say he has killed these 2 people. That sound about right to start this off?
Right. And the reason that they knew that was through CODIS, right?
Right.
Okay, so they matched the victim DNA from the perpetrator that was left on the victims, matched each other in CODIS.
Right.
And from that, they did a genetic genealogy profile, which you explained.
This is where it gets weird. They arrest this guy. His name is Gary Dean Artman. He's 64 years old in 2022. They arrest him in Mississippi, but he's from Florida. And then they extradite him back to Michigan. And they convict him of killing Sharon Hammock. And this guy's really combative in court. I don't know if you've seen him talking, but when he's sitting down in court, he is just mean. He tells the investigators they're idiots. He talks a bunch of trash about them. Police realize pretty quickly that he might be involved in some other murders. And the prosecutor makes a mistake. During the sentencing for Sharon Hammock's murder, basically gets life in prison in September 2023. And the prosecutor makes a mistake. The prosecutor mentions 11 murders. During the sentencing, he says that they think he's responsible for up to 11 unsolved homicides. That's not even, none of this is the part that is making me tell this story right now. What's making me get into this story is this guy over Christmas is known to be dying. You think that's a fair way to describe it? He's known to be dying.
He's actually in a coma, yeah.
Yeah. So on his deathbed, he admits to 11 murders. He reaches out to detectives in Michigan days before he's going to die. He admits to 11 murders. The first 10 of them, he admits to them. He had been in a coma on a respirator. They were expecting him to have already been dead. They knew that this Maryland case it's a May 2006 case. It's a young victim named Dusty Shuck. Had you ever heard of her?
No. I mean,
Okay.
except in conjunction with this case, with when he was being tried, yeah.
Yeah, she was 24 years old, and she was found beaten and stabbed to death near a truck stop off of I-70 in Maryland on May 4th of 2006. But she comes from California. So her getting out here is kind of wild. So Dusty and Sharon are two victims that, like, we kind of knew those were going to be his because the DNA had matched. But this guy then confesses to a stack of murders that he had been denying. It is the weirdest thing for me to see someone do an about face like this, because he could have just as easily passed away and not given this information to authorities. But here's what they have. And somebody put this together on Reddit, so I'm just going to read it for now. But I'm going to point out a couple of things. This is from Groggy21. They threw this up really fast, actually, on Reddit serial killers. It like just was there. And their post on there on the serial killers subreddit says that a recent deathbed confession has likely just solved one of the most prolific serial murder investigations in Michigan's history, that of the Grand Rapids serial killer. From 1993 to 1997, a serial killer or killers targeted women in and around the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan. I had never heard it called Grand Rapids serial killer, like in terms of there being an overarching name, but I have seen allusions to this in newspapers over the years. Now, this serial killer was leaving bodies in rural areas, and most of the victims were sex workers. The killer was pretty good at hiding bodies, but by the time they were found, they were only bones, and there was not a lot of physical evidence that had been found. There are 17 women on this list. The first woman is Linda McHugh. She was last seen December 13th, 1993. Her body's never been found. She is attributed to this serial killer. Second one is Lisa Ottberg. She was last seen January 1st, 1994. Her body was found under some brush, and she had no clothes on, and she had been strangled. Third one is Robin Scott. She was last seen on January 18th, 1994. Her body has never been found. The fourth one is Shelley Keppert Christian. She goes missing at an unknown time, but her remains end up being found by hunters in November of 1994. Pam Varilla is the fifth body. She is found on the banks of the Grand River, June of 1995. She goes missing June 1st. She's found on June 2nd. She died of blunt force trauma to the head. I'm not so sure she's involved, but we're going to leave her on the list for the moment. Fonda Lockridge was last seen on June 15th, 1995, and her body has never been found. She would have been a potential sixth victim. Kathleen Dennis, which is a big deal, she was last seen on July 7th, 1995, and she and the third victim, Robin Scott, were last seen in the same area. The eighth person on this list is Gail Cook. She was last seen on October 4th, 1995, and her body gets found a week later in a wooded area. She'd been strangled to death. The ninth victim is a woman named Dawn Shaver, who was last seen November 17th, 1995. Her body gets found in a creek that's underneath a railroad bridge later the same day, and she had been beaten and strangled. The 10th victim is a woman named Dawn Phillips. She went missing on January 19th of 1996. Her remains get found later in the year, in October of 1996, and investigators say that she died of homicidal violence, but they never release a cause of death that I can find. The 11th victim is Michelle Becker, last seen April 27th of 1996. Her body gets found August 9th in a wooded area. No cause of death has been released there. Then we've got the 12th victim is Victoria Moore. She disappears on August 1st, 1996, and her remains get found by a hunter October 27th. 13th victim is Cheryl Mason. She's last seen on August 6th, 1996, and her remains get found in bushes behind a business on October 13th. I'm looking at these names. I'm not 100% sure they're right on all these names, but we're going to come back to that. Sherry Stewart Brown is the 14th suspected victim of the Grand Rapids serial killer. She's last seen August 9th, 1996, but her skeletal remains are found in an overgrown area near a road on July 2nd, 1998. The 15th victim is Sonia Campos. She goes missing September 4th, 96, and her remains are found September 21st, 96, about 2 miles away from where Sherry Stewart Brown's remains were later found. Then we have, obviously, in the course of the timeline, we have Sharon Hammock. She is found. And the last one is Stephanie Judson. She's the 17th progressive person here. Her remains get found at a roadside park on July 31st, 1997. So they're starting to link all of this together. Now, I will say this. The guy falls back into a coma, Gary Altman. He falls back into a coma, comes out of it, and he confesses to Dusty Shuck's murder in Maryland. That's the one his DNA was on. Authorities have not released this complete list. This is somebody putting this out there on Reddit right now, and I saw a similar list on Web Sleuths. So this is going to be popping up over the next couple of days, but it's going to be one to watch, I think. It's another killer that has died. The way this person wraps up their post is, here's what she says, or they say, I don't know if it's a guy or a girl. For a long time, there was little progress on the cases, and the investigators and the public alike had little hope of solving these murders. That all changed in 2022 when forensic genealogy linked DNA found on the body of Shannon Hammock. She says Shannan Hammock for Sharon Hammock here. I don't know what's going on. Keep that all as a grain of salt. They found DNA on her body to link a 66-year-old long-haul trucker named Gary Artman. So when Gary Artman died, he was 66 years old. He was 64 when he was arrested. And he was definitely connected to Dusty. She was found beaten and stabbed to death at a rest stop near Frederick, Maryland on May 4th, 2006. She does not fit this timeline, but she is linked by DNA, and that makes me wonder so many things. I think that's probably my biggest question. He was expected to die in December, but unexpectedly came out of his coma and had an apparent change of heart. He had been denying his involvement in all of this.
He had even denied the crime that he was convicted for, right?
Right. DNA found on the body of Pam Varel revealed that Artman was not her killer. So this is going to be kind of a lumping and splitting thing that happens for a while where they try and use his DNA to rule him out. Some of these you can't because there is no DNA. Well, so here's what I had to say about all of this, because this is all new. This is kind of news-ish as far as it's unfolding as we're recording.
Didn't it just wasn't it yesterday where they announced it?
We're doing this because I was like, I like that one. Let's put that one out. And we're doing this as a lead in to the beginning of what will be season 5 of True Crime Excess. And I just wanted to sort of get your...
Well, great, because I have something that I feel like this will be interesting to follow. So we've got a guy who we have DNA evidence that links him to 2 crimes, 2 rapes and murders of women that span across over a decade, right?
Yeah.
Through CODIS. So the events link and then they link him. And all this stuff is new-ish. Now, he was just convicted in September of 23, right?
Correct. And he got life in prison for Sharon Hammock's murder.
Right. What happened was after being, terminally, he had a terminal prognosis and he was in a coma. And I don't know if they brought him out or if he just came out of it. He makes it what is a classic deathbed confession, right?
Yeah.
And so you can fill in anything I've misunderstood here. Because, like I said, it happened yesterday, he died 7 days ago, right?
Correct.
And nothing about it was released until after he died. But I'm interested to see if there was evidence linking him, if he was fed any information, if any presumptions were made otherwise. So it's one of those cases where you've got a guy having a deathbed confession where we can see how valid it really is as far as him being the actual perpetrator of the crime. Now, I'm saying all that just to be a little bit skeptical. I'm not saying that the investigators have done anything wrong, but this is one of the very first... I'm trying to think. I know that there's been attorneys that have given out, list of...
Yeah.
But this is a unique situation here where you've got a guy who was convicted very recently of a crime that was several decades old, right?
Yeah.
dying. And right before he dies, he gives an unexpected confession. And and like you said, they haven't released everything about it or whatever. And so I believe that it's speculation, right, on who's on the list. Is that right or no?
Well, so the way this works is that person on Reddit pulled from woodtv.com, looks like to me, and Fox 59, where Fox 59 sort of went back. And although I'm giving them credit on Reddit, that reads word for word like it was pulled from a couple of different news articles where reporters were trying to put, there's even a map up. They were trying to put these old cases kind of all out there. Missing
there
women.
There is nothing wrong with doing that because they need the exposure. The only thing that concerns me is that like once that connection's made, it can if it doesn't solve everything and there is this like one massive serial killer, to me it almost hinders it.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a case where we're going to know for a minute. That's why I was putting it out there now, because like we're going to be dealing with some slightly older cases of serial killers shortly. I thought this was a good lead-in. Plus, this happens near I-70. But what I was going to point out here is I think the prosecutor made a mistake. Blair Lockman said something in the closing arguments about there being potentially 11 other murders. So I don't want to drag this particular case on forever because I think it's going to come up again as we get news on it. I think this is going to be my true crime news that sticks in my head for a while. How do you go to prison, you get out in 92, and then suddenly you go on a spree? We'll say based on what all is being offered right here, 95, 96, and then you do nothing until 2006?
Oh, I don't think that.
Particularly when you're this violent a person.
Yeah, well, not to mention a little bit, I don't have a source on it, but basically once he went to prison and got out, like he learned not to leave a witness behind, right?
Yes, and that's what one of the articles said at the end, is like he wouldn't leave witnesses again.
Right, which is why he escalated to be, a murderer rather than just a rapist. Now, his case, it's actually, I feel like it's on the very fringe, but I'm not entirely sure. This guy is the reason why people who commit first-degree rape can now get life in prison, right? The cases like this, where, there's no question that he should have been in jail and never gotten out the first time, right? But that's not how it worked, in the 80s and 90s, in early 90s. But this is a prime example of why that changed, is because this is the trend that they were seeing.
I have looked at a bunch of roadside and like body dump cases over the years. And when I say a bunch, I'm talking thousands. Because body dumps are bizarre when they happen. And that typically indicates someone is either trying to distance themselves from a crime or they're not from that area and they don't know what to do with the body. Now, there are other reasons, so don't get me wrong on that. But when I started hunting through Larry Hall, Israel Keys, when I was doing other serial killers, I would frequently go, well, this one could be, when you get into these, like they've been dumped just off the road, but it's also close to hunting land, but it's also close to this trailhead. So this case fascinates me for that reason to begin with, but also from the perspective that like this is going to be an interesting investigation to unfold. I hope there's more DNA evidence, but if he only gave them 11 names based on that prosecutor saying there's 11 homicides we're looking into, that's going to be an interesting and fascinating thing to me. But what this does that like I really find interesting, and I hope he gave them names and everything on the 11 confessions. What makes it interesting to me, if they release all of this, is it reduces other clusters. It means that like if you can take certain people out of certain situations, sometimes you can find their killer because the thing that didn't fit for this suspect is gone.
Right, and eventually that will deconstruct all of the overarching highway serial killers, are the way they're clumped together, right? one of the things that caught my attention, I don't know how much it's going to matter, but I did want to say something because I felt like it was relevant. And the source on this is Fox 17, and I'm not sure who wrote it, but it's from the trial. And so when the trial began, the prosecutors said that during the trial that Artman and Hammock had actually met up prior to meeting when she was killed. She was a known sex worker at the time, and that they had met in person at least one time for a specific sexual act. And Hammock left that meeting disturbed afterwards. She told a friend of Hammock's on the stand, testified that she had told the friend that the guy was a creep and that he was rough and he forced her to do things she didn't want to do. Okay. And so there's some sort of narrative that happens in the prosecution's case. And I don't think this trial was like televised, was it?
I don't think the entire thing is. I think you can find most of it online.
Okay,
but I don't think it was like live anywhere.
And so I'm prefacing. I only ask because I'm prefacing in that I didn't watch the trial, so this testimony is not me absorbing it. This is me absorbing what somebody else absorbed. So the narrative the prosecution is building, it indicates that Artman even though Hammock had that encounter where she felt disturbed and she told her friend, this guy's a creep, he convinced her to come meet him again, saying that because he said he had a gift for her. And so Hammock actually went to the hotel room to meet Artman and took her friend with her, right? And they that threw him off of his game, I guess, and so they left. Now, I'd like to hear this entire testimony. It's weird how they kind of skim over it here, but basically that testimony was leading to the fact that the prosecution's narrative was that Artman tracked Hammock down, kidnapped her, sexually assaulted her, and then killed her. And so that is a narrative that it doesn't make me immediately think of like serial killers necessarily. However, I don't know how evolved the notion of this sort of not seeing your victim as a person is, right? Because this guy was attracted to this woman, right?
Yeah.
Even if she was even though they're saying she's a sex worker, he had some sort of infatuation with her, like not just a sex worker. And so to me, that starts getting, I'm not saying that they were in any sort of relationship, but the mindset here, it's more of a personal one.
Well, even with, take Dusty Shuck for a second. There's going to be some level of something happening because he takes her all the way across the country.
If he didn't know her before, he knew her after, because that's quite the ride, huh?
Yeah, that's a long ride. And I don't have a lot more on him today. I think you're right that there could be something really weird about that.
Well, to me, and so that was in the 90s, right? And to me, I know that it's not a domestic situation, most definitely not. She clearly was not in a relationship with him. She was working to get money, right? He took it a step further, and there's not information about other activity he was doing like this, right? But to me, I don't feel like that doesn't sound to me like the prosecution was setting this up to be like this big serial killer case.
Oh, no, they didn't believe that it was at the time. I don't think that's where they were headed. I don't think, regardless of where they're headed, I don't think it's where they were aiming to win that case. That can sometimes look different than the real thing that happened.
I also wondered, which again could be solved possibly if I could see the case, the trial footage. Where was this witness, when it happened, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, I can't. I'm just having trouble following it. But again, if I find it, I'll let you know. And
Well, I just thought this was a good way to kick off the new year. So, like, this one can come back up and will, I
this
assume.
this is something I think we should absolutely follow, because what we've got right now is one of those things that really we've only ever seen in history, right? Where
Right.
They give a list of victims, and your position is he might have felt like he had to give the number to satisfy what the prosecutor had said in the closing, maybe something like that.
I feel
there
like,
could potentially be more, right?
well, so this guy's a Marine, and I found him like on newspapers.com where he like is enlisting. It's in the 70s, and then I can track him through prison, and then he has this big open gap of time where he's clearly out roving. He learned to kill the witnesses. So,
Right, because he got caught, right? And
correct.
I believe I also read, like, not only did he get out, but like he served the maximum amount that was allowed for his crime. Like,
Yeah,
didn't
they
grant him
literally let his
sentence run out.
they
Like,
let
he
it
wasn't given,
expire. Yeah.
right, because they didn't, because so somebody recognized that. Now, I do wonder, okay, the way it's set up currently in the media, which I don't know, this is also a good thing that you can see. This was a fairly, because of the way it was set up, this is basically just a guy getting convicted of a cold case, right? It wasn't like it was, there's not like Dateline on it or anything, right?
Not yet, no.
That's my point. So everything came out, and then like it's just the same regurgitated stuff, but it kind of like spreads, right? It's like volcano lava as it
Yeah.
kind of covers everything. Okay. And so because we're starting at this sort of point in time where basically in September of 2023 he was finally convicted of it. 1996, I believe, was that when Hammack was killed?
Yeah.
He's convicted of that, and he goes to jail for the rest of his life. He's sitting in the rest of his life in prison, and they have absolutely no hope that he's going to confess to anything. He's in a coma, wakes up, meets with investigators, makes his confession. Do you think that he had like a come to the end of my life crisis of conscience that
I don't know if you want to hear my opinion on that. I think he wanted credit.
well, I mean, that's possible. I feel like he could have really yeah, I don't know, like, because
That gets complicated because then
I was
that
gonna
means
say,
that the 11 is probably real, but
well,
I
I
don't
was gonna
believe that
say,
number.
like, Henry V. Lucas wanted credit, right?
Correct.
And
Correct.
I mean, he went like ballistically crazy with his 300 murders, right?
Yeah.
And so 11 to me is a little bit weird for that situation, right? This guy, just based on what we know happened, he was not a nice guy. And I don't understand the mindset. I never want to understand the mindset of, I killed the most, or, whatever that whole situation is. But like, I wondered if this guy had experienced something, because never in a million years does anything about him indicate, up until that very point in time that he did it, that like he's going to give any sort of sense of closure. So you could be 100% right. This could just be, he could have been being honest, which, if his victim count is 11, it is what it is, right? And he just wanted credit for what he had done, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I find it fascinating. I'll, hopefully they'll put out more information, because they did go ahead and release that, he had made these deathbed confessions. I'm always skeptical of that, but
I believe deathbed confessions more than I believe playtime confessions. So Henry Lucas is a playtime confession. Like
all he is.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's playtime confession. It's just he's getting favors, he's getting out into the world, he's getting field trips. It's playtime confession. This I feel like could be more real.
Well,
but I don't know yet.
And he had. It's just a weird, like, anytime somebody confesses to 300 murders, they didn't do that. Okay, I can assure you of that. And it's ridiculous. This guy had nothing to lose, and the only thing that changed between the time where he was in custody and because there's no way he died from the cancer he had. Like, he had to have already had that happening, I think.
He knew he was dying, yes.
But there was nothing that changed between the times of leading up to his trial that he wouldn't talk to investigators and his ultimate deathbed confessions, except the fact that he was in a coma, and I guess he realized he wasn't going to make it much longer.
Yeah, maybe that makes it harder for me to believe he might be playing games.
I don't think that the shape that I imagine that he was in, I definitely don't think it was a game. There would be no reason for that, right?
I think he may have confessed to what he could remember in the moment.
That's possible.
He came out and confessed to this other case that he knew his DNA was on or whatever had happened there. It's just, okay, here's what's hard. And this will be my final thoughts for today. I have difficulty looking at this and going, because I see this list and I understand people are putting it out there, and I put it out there too. I'm just throwing it out there because those cases deserve closure. I have a difficulty to think that, like, at the end of the day, this is going to be a guy who killed 10 people in Michigan, but then suddenly has this Maryland person, but was a long haul trucker and has no other victims or only has victims in these two places. Like, those are confusing thoughts for me to wrap my head around.
Well, right. And so, as far as like the Grand Rapids serial killer, and he's already been attributed as being that guy.
It's happening now. Like, this is
right
so
now.
new. Yeah,
okay.
This is so new.
And
we will be one of the first podcasts out about this.
How is it possible? And this is just me thinking about this, because we do know for certain that he did confess to the crime that he had been convicted of already, and Dusty, right?
Right.
Because there was a DNA link there, and she has nothing to do with Michigan or Grand Rapids or like any of that. And so I'm immediately confused because I'm like, well, how are they saying he's the Grand Rapids serial killer? It doesn't even follow his like very initial MO, right?
Well, this morning, the news had a quote where, well, it's not even a quote, it's a recorded conversation. It's an audio piece, and it's them talking to Catherine Dennis's family. So they're reaching out and making notifications as we're talking.
That's the police. That's law enforcement.
Detective. It was the detective calling.
Yeah.
So we're about to see a little more about this, maybe.
Well, I do think that I hate to even revel in this because it involves so many young women's deaths, basically. But I am a little bit fascinated by how this will unravel and how we'll get to sort of explain different elements of how narratives are built, right? And that's what I was saying about it not having been on Dateline or anything like that yet. The narrative of the case is built and how like it easily becomes wrong, misinterpreted, whatever you want to say about it. But so this is a really interesting event. I think that's fair enough to say without, because I'm not trying to demean the victims at all, but I feel like that this is an interesting kind of thing that's gonna bloom coming, over 2024.
Yeah, and so if something crazy happens this weekend, we may come back with one more episode on this now. Like if they release a list and there's a lot to look at that's not just speculation by reporters and other web sleuths, then we'll take a look at it. If not, next week we'll be starting a series on a serial killer, and we'll make room for this as we move into season 5. Did you have anything else you want to throw out there today?
Nope.
A convicted murderer who was on his deathbed in a Michigan prison came out of a coma and confessed to killing 11 women. He then died.
Now, police in Kent County, Michigan are trying to give some closure to families whose loved ones were murdered. Susan Samples reports Gary Artman, who died of lung cancer, was defiant until the very end when he surprisingly confessed to the crimes.
This is Tommy.
Hey, Tommy. Andy Hines, Detective Sergeant with the Kent County Sheriff's Office.
On the other end of the line, a son who's been waiting 28 years for this call to finally know the face of the monster who took his mom away.
Unfortunately, he did disclose to us some details where we believe he's responsible for your mom's murder.
Tommy Dennis was just 7 years old when his mom, Kathleen Dennis, known for her laughter and bubbly spirit, traveled with her sister from their hometown in Nebraska to work Division Avenue in Grand Rapids Red Light District. That's where police are now confident that she crossed paths with serial killer Gary Artman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're still working, Tommy, on several other cases in the Grand Rapids area around the same time. We believe he could be linked to many more.
Over 3 years in the mid-90s, 17 moms, sisters, wives, most working in the sex industry, were found murdered in and around Grand Rapids. 4 of them, including Kathleen Dennis, vanished, never to be seen again. For nearly 3 decades, there were no answers until forensic genetic genealogists, using suspect DNA from the 1996 murder of Sharon Hammock, identified Gary Artman as Hammock's killer.
But all these other murders, they're idiots. Your detectives right there, excuse my language, are idiots.
Artman, defiant at his sentencing, stuck to his claim of innocence. But 3 months later, as he neared death, a stunning confession. Sources confirmed to Target 8 that the long-haul trucker said he murdered 11 women, 10 in Grand Rapids, including Sharon Hammock, and 1 in the state of Maryland. 24-year-old Dusty Shuck was found beaten and stabbed off I-70 near a truck stop.
She was an amazing soul. She was good inside and out.
Dusty Shuck's mom, Lori Kreitzer, told Target 8 Artman was in a coma on a respirator, expected to die.
And he did not die. He came out of the coma after the respirator went out and fully confessed to Dusty's murder. So at least he did that, and then died the 28th at the hospital, and Dusty's birthday was the 29th. So she would have been 42.
Kathleen Dennis would have been 56. Detectives said, based on details Artman provided, it's unlikely Dennis's remains could ever be recovered.
Yes, at least it, provides some kind of closure. I mean, ideally, I would like her returned to me, but this is just kind of where things are at.
That was Susan Samples reporting. Detectives are still working through the details they learned from Artman, comparing them with 17 missing persons files from the Grand Rapids area during the time he was active.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next time.
This is True Crime XS.
Did I tell you about taking my kid to court and the pregnant woman getting held in contempt?
No.
So we go in. This is a long time ago. My kid was maybe 13. And we were in one of those really small courtrooms where they kind of rotate people in and out of. And
Right.
I think you guys have bigger courtrooms. Ours are really tiny. Anyways, so the kid was there, and it was half criminal, half family court that day. So they were calling 2 dockets at the same time. And they had 2 different prosecutors in the room because the prosecutor with the civil stuff was really just like an advocate. like on behalf, like they did a bunch of like protective orders and things like that day. And so some of the cases were, they set it up that way because some of the cases were there for both, meaning they were there for a civil protective order, but that's because there was a criminal charge linked to it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so there's this woman, and she's clearly 15 months pregnant.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like
Right.
she's so pregnant that like, and we go through everything, and my kid's like kind of in the back because the bailiff kept wanting us to like rotate stuff out, and I'm sitting right behind the box on the left side. And I don't know what this woman said because I missed the first part of it, but the judge just stopped everything. And she'd actually, somebody said she'd never hit her gavel before, but she like almost broke it that day. And she says, look, I'm going to have to hold you in contempt because you're being ridiculous. And the pregnant woman was like, then you hold me wherever you need to hold me. And so she's like in the second row, and the judge was like, get up. So she gets up and she like walks down the aisle. She's like, do you have any idea where you are? And this woman is maybe 23, 24 years old. And she's like, who are you sitting beside? And she calls out who she's sitting beside. She's like, is that the defendant in this protective order and these felony criminal matters for this afternoon? And the woman is like, and she said, are you seriously considering lying to me right now? The woman just has a meltdown. She picks up a chair and shoves it out of the way. And like, it was the courtroom, like that has the swinging door to step out from the galley. So it's like the door starts swinging back and forth and the bailiff comes over and she like runs towards the bench. But this particular courtroom, the bench is actually like the top of it's probably 7 feet off the ground because the judge steps up a little thing and sits in the middle. And the woman hits it. The little pregnant woman hits it and just falls back. And my kid is like breaking out a phone to record it and stuff. The bailiff puts the woman in handcuffs, and the woman's like, he says she's slippery or something like that. And he like puts her back over at the desk, and the judge asks, he's like, how pregnant are you right now? And the woman's like, whatever number of months she is, because she's clearly about to like have a baby like right in the courtroom. I'm sort of exaggerating, but not really. And she was like, do you have any idea like what you're doing, like what's going on? And her mom stands up and tries to defend her, and she's like, I've got to hold you in contempt. And the woman goes off again, and at this point she's in handcuffs, and she's like, I'm going to hold you in contempt. And she's like, right now you're going to stay in contempt till this afternoon session. And you can just cool off in the holding cell. So she like starts to take her back, and she walks. The deputy scoops her up, and a female deputy comes out from like the hallway behind the chambers, and they start to walk her out. And I don't know what happens, but it's a pretty long hallway, and it's a couple of elevators there. But you can hear the woman shouting as she walks out of the courtroom. And then all of a sudden you hear something go boom. The judge says, bring her back in here. So the deputies bring her back in here, and they like put her back in the box, and like she asked her what's going on and what did she just do. She gives her 48 hours for contempt. And the woman says, I don't care. You can give me a week. And the judge says, fine, we're going to hold you for a week. And the judge says, we're going to need medical to come over and take a look at this one. So one of the deputies leaves, and the woman kicks the big table thinking that it's bolted to the floor, and the big table like rolls forward. It doesn't fall, but it like rolls forward like it's going to, and then it just wobbles for a second. And the judge is like, I'm telling you right now. And the woman says, you give me whatever time you want to do. And she said, all right. She said, that's 2 weeks. And the bailiff starts to walk her out, and she kicks the door like so that it swings back and it hits the bailiff in the arm. And the judge is like, get her back in here, brings her back in again and gives her 30 days. I don't know if it ever resolved itself differently, but I was like, oh, great. This is the day I bring my kid to court.
I think that was a great experience. That's exactly what you don't want to do. And you have no idea. Of course, that's none of our business. But I'm just curious, like how the judge hadn't done anything to this woman, right? She was clearly upset about something. And the
The judge
defiant,
literally was probably going to have no contact with this woman until she did that.
and you don't know what got the judge's attention, right?
No, it was something to do with when they call the civil docket, they just call by last name, and I don't know, the bailiffs will tell them different things, but usually it's like if you are the protected on the protective order, please say witness, and if you're the person who the protective order is going to be against, say present, it'd be something like that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I guess they
And
called
you're
the name.
supposed to be sitting on opposite sides, but you did say it was a split session, so
Yeah, well, they said something like, Smith versus Smith, and when the clerk or either the clerk or maybe the ADA was calling that day, when they called, they were like witness present, and they were sitting right beside each other, which is a huge no-no.
right. Okay, so that's what sparked it.
And well, it's probably the first part of it, and I missed it when it happened. But typically, what will happen at that point is the bailiff will politely walk over and be like, "You head on over there. I'll find you a spot," and like tell people to move around a little bit and like separate them so that the judge doesn't lose it. But
Right, because I will say that doesn't surprise me in the least. While there are very clear cases that warrant the court's involvement, right? Unfortunately, I would say starting in the 2000s, so 2000 forward, DV orders became a joke a little bit. And
do you mean from like the quantity?
The quantity, the reasoning behind them. Like, for example, somebody that you really needed a domestic violence protection order against, you wouldn't be sitting next to them in court. It wouldn't even be a thing. And so it became this weird quasi-judicial mechanism that people use in the weirdest ways. And I mean, wouldn't you agree with that statement? Like, the judge was absolutely right to call her out on that and say, like, you can't be sitting beside of him because it's a no contact order, right?
Yeah, with like, and those orders, those were ex parte orders that like typically the order would already be in place because whatever had happened, a magistrate had issued it ex parte, which means for people, if we leave this in, it means that like one party wasn't there. So because that's happened, the order's in effect.
Right. And so in the true spirit of the word of what it's supposed to represent, domestic violence protection, it's not a situation where you could like even physically bring yourself to sit beside that person because there's conflict. And that's what I mean when I say that. Like, if you're like, sitting with the person, there's no reason for this order to be in place. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, but I think I don't necessarily want to use the word joke, but I'll leave it in, and I'll say that like I would say some of it is farcical or kind of weird because the state can also issue a no contact order, not just ex parte, but also on behalf of a victim.
Well, right. And okay, I want to say, but domestic violence is very serious when it is domestic violence. Okay. Right. Having an argument with your significant other and not winning and then going before a judge to bully them into whatever you're doing there, right?
Yeah.
If you're not genuinely afraid, these are things that can be taken care of outside of the courtroom, and they're not domestic violence. It is a mechanism that has been abused by society, basically, in my opinion. Now, people who really, unfortunately, what I've seen, and it's true, sadly, most of the time, people who are truly people who are victims of domestic violence to the point that they are murdered in a domestic violence situation, they never had the opportunity to have any sort of domestic violence protection intervention, right?
Yeah.
Because that's sort of one of the elements that go along with what true domestic violence is. The other thing I would say is, and the reason I take such a hard line on this is because if everything is domestic violence, then nothing is domestic violence, right?
In terms of protections in the system, you're absolutely right.
And it bothers me when I see it being abused or used inappropriately, because it means that it's taken that much less seriously when it actually needs to be there. But most of, there are penalties involved, violating a court order to stay away from your domestic partner. But ultimately, in real cases where there's domestic violence that's going to inevitably happen, those mean absolutely nothing to those people.
I know. That's one of the things, it's just one of those situations where I thought it was interesting that was the time that, the kid comes to court and like all of this went down. And I was it was a very unusual, particularly for that judge, that courtroom, everything that was going on there, it was very unusual to see something like that happening. And then
she was just having a really bad day.
Yep.
It doesn't seem like she tried to kill the judge, though.
No. I mean, she was just like kind of lumbering around because she was a really little person that was very, very pregnant. And like, I don't think there was any substances involved or anything like that. I think she was just fed up with her significant other. From the looks of it, by the number of people that were in the court with the two of them, she was fed up with her parents and his parents, and she was ready for that baby to be here, and she was ready for him to be whatever.
That probably made a world of difference right there. The fact she was pregnant and going and having to be in court, right? I mean, God, that's awful. I hope that our earlier defendant we talked about with Deobra, Redden, was that his name? I hope that, he has now made a statement indicating he was having a bad day and wanted to kill the judge. And I feel like he can just, fall into obscurity and never talk about this to the media again. Wouldn't you say?
I hope so. Jeez, man. That's all I got, man. All right, so I'm going to tell you guys a few things about some of the folks who are helping sponsor our show. Now, Labrati Creations sponsors our show, and you can always use the Crime XS code there. You can also just message them at Labrati Creations, and they will generally do something for the people who come from True Crime XS. They were our very first sponsor. They've done a lot for the show, and that code is CrimeXS at LabratiCreations.com. The first new advertisers that we have, and I've selected all of these guys. I've selected all of these advertisers. So the very first one is Cure. Now, I'm going to tell you guys about this, about Cure as being one of our sponsors. If you're an athlete, you know that proper hydration is key to peak performance, but plain water can be boring and sports drinks can be filled with artificial ingredients and added sugars. That's why we love Cure. It's a clean and effective way to stay hydrated and perform at your best. I use it late in the day when I switch out of caffeine mode. Specifically, when I hit the pool or I go play tennis with my wife, I use Cure to help me stay hydrated. It helps me recover after a long day. Now, you guys may not know this, but I build things. Right now, I've been building several structures on our property out here. Among those is a new podcast studio space for myself. I do a lot of that work at night and into the wee hours, and I always have some Cure with me to go into my aluminum water bottle. Hydration is not just about filling up my aluminum bottle with water. Cure Hydration is an oral rehydration solution that contains the perfect balance of electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb water and rehydrate quickly. Whether I'm building things or putting the podcast together or chasing these dogs that you sometimes hear in my studio up and down the trails to get them worn out, Cure Hydration is the way that I choose to go. Cure Hydration is an oral rehydration solution, or an ORS, that contains the perfect balance of electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb water and to rehydrate quickly. The formula is made with all natural ingredients like coconut water powder and pink Himalayan salt. It's free from artificial flavors, from sweeteners, and preservatives. Pure Hydration is vegan, gluten-free, and non-GMO, making it a great option for anyone with dietary restrictions or preferences. The packets are convenient and easy to use. You just mix them with your water and you drink. They're perfect for on the go. They're perfect for travel. And anytime you need a quick and effective hydration boost, ready to combat dehydration, then you try Cure today and feel the difference for yourself. You can use code TrueCrimeXS for 20% off your order. That's TrueCrimeXS. I have a link that I'm putting in the most recent episode show notes, and TrueCrimeXS will get you 20% off. Our second sponsor for the show today is Laird. Now, Laird has a list of things that they want me to tell you about. They have better ingredients with amazing taste and functional benefits. They have a superfood creamer crafted from the highest quality, all-natural, real food ingredients. All Laird products are sustainably sourced and thoroughly tested to ensure that you're incorporating the cleanest, finest fuel into your routine. They have all-natural, whole food ingredients, and they contain naturally occurring MCTs made from coconut oil. There's no artificial flavors, there's no colors or additives, and there's no sugar from highly refined corn syrup. They want me to talk about my love of coffee, but the truth is, I don't do much with coffee. But let me tell you someone who does. My wife has to have a cup of coffee every day. Now, I've fallen off recently, but one of the big things that I've done since the beginning of our relationship is she used to go and get a Starbucks every morning. I have substituted that out by always trying to make her coffee. It's not going to be every single day of time from when I met her, but for the most part, almost every day, I make her coffee. I put her creamers together and I make sure that she has a good way to start her day. So with Laird, he started experimenting with his morning ritual almost 2 decades ago. He found that when he started adding fats to his morning cup, like coconut oil, he had amazing energy throughout the rest of his day. He gradually perfected this recipe for an epic cup of fuel, and he began sharing it with his friends in the surf community. I'm an ocean guy, so I saw this item and I was like, okay, we're going to try this one out. Are you ready to feel more energized, more focused, and supported? Go to lairdsuperfood.com and add nourishing plant-based foods to fuel you from sunrise to sunset. And you can use our promo code at checkout to save 15% off your purchase today. Our offer code for this for Laird is going to be TrueCrimeXS. Pretty much everywhere except for Labarde Creations, if you use TrueCrimeXS, that will get you, at Laird, it'll get you 15% off. At some of the other places, they'll get you 20% off. I'm going to tell you about 2 more sponsors today. So the first one is, the third one is Liquid IV. So let's talk about the real reasons that you need to hydrate. Late night TV binging, back-to-back Zoom meetings, going on a walk with your friends. Everyday hydration is not just for high-energy athletic endeavors. Liquid IV is the #1 powdered hydration brand in America. It's now available in sugar-free. This is years in the making, but Hydration Multiplier Sugar-Free uses a proprietary zero-sugar hydration solution with no artificial sweeteners. It's got 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, but it's also got 8 vitamins and nutrients for everyday wellness. Liquid IV hydrates 2 times faster than water alone. Keep your daily routine exciting with 3 new flavors. They've got white peach, green grape, and lemon lime. I love all of these flavors, but I think that my favorite is probably the green grape. White peach I use as a secondary flavor, and lemon lime I leave here for my kids and my wife. Liquid IV believes that equitable access to clean and abundant water is the foundation of a healthier world. They also partner with leading organizations to fund and foster innovative solutions that help communities protect both their water and their futures. To date, Liquid IV has donated over 39 million servings in 50 plus countries around the world. You can get 20% off when you grab your Liquid IV Hydration Multiplier sugar-free or any other variant at liquidiv.com and use code TrueCrimeXS at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code TrueCrimeXS at liquidiv.com. And the last sponsor I want to tell you about is Zencastr. We are part of Zencastr's creative network. We've been using Zencastr since about midway into our first season. Meg and I experimented with a lot of different ways to put the podcast together. And the truth is, Zencastr was an integral ingredient to us being able to bring you this show. It's so easy. It's now super easy. You can record a podcast with Zencastr. You can log in using your browser and you start recording a high quality podcast right away. You can record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guest. You get to feel a sense of zen, knowing that Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you will always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. You sound your best. I mean, if you've ever worried about what you sound like, Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recordings. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. You can set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. That's how you don't hear my dogs every second of every episode. Zencastr is all in one. If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are now over. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast all in one place, and you can distribute to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations. Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code TrueCrimeXS, and you're going to get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. You can also check out the other plans they have available. I want you to have the same easy experiences that I do for all my podcasting and content needs. So zencastr.com/pricing. The offer code is TrueCrimeXS, and it's time for you to share your story today. We are also adding New Era as a sponsor for the show. New Era Cap is a headwear and apparel brand founded in 1920 in Buffalo, New York. Now, I actually have some experience with New Era caps. My dad and I have been through multiple iterations of baseball caps through the years. We collect different styles, different eras, and now my teenager has started his own cap collection and has several New Eras as the centerpieces. Our favorite teams may not be the same, but our outfits are all topped with the same New Era ball caps. We love the quality and the ability to wear what the players are wearing. Not to mention, New Era is the leading headwear manufacturer with quality licensed products. You can support your favorite college or pro team in style, from the official headwear provider for the MLB, NFL, and NBA. You can get a stylish accessory for your everyday ensemble and support True Crime XS. Just shop the official headwear and get 15% off when you go to neweracap.com. That's neweracap.com/TrueCrimeXS. You can also use the code TrueCrimeXS at checkout. That's it. That's all you have to do. And that's 15% off your order using the promo code TrueCrimeXS.